what is worship, really? And does God need it? Or is it really a self-satisfying orgy of our own creation? Is worship a sacrifice that God requires? Is worship some ego stroking God needs? Or is worship something intended to change us? An extended exercise in gratitude, perhaps. An attempt to commune directly with God. And what about everything else? There's prayer, praise, an attempt to learn from opaque ancient wisdom, made more or less opaque by the sermon of the day, and a theologically dense reenactment of a condemned man's last meal. First things are always first, though. We carry heavy burdens, you and I. All of our concerns, or if you like the blunt edge, fears and rages. How can we attempt to see God holding this giant pile of worry and outrage? So we put each one down at the foot of the altar, praying for each in turn. God already knows everything we need. But a little ritual in the act of putting aside concerns helps us to keep from picking them up immediately again. Second things second. That moment, that beautiful moment when we realize that we don't need to carry this monumental burden we normally tote around without thinking, that is a moment for deep gratitude. Who reminded us we're unnecessarily torturing ourselves? God, of course, who knew all along and has been trying to gently suggest that one or two or all could be put aside, except we were filled to the ears with angst and could not hear. And now we hear, not judgment, not I told you so. We hear laughter and joy at having made such a good decision. So we wallow in gratitude, not in a joyless, condemned but pardoned way. We're grateful in an effervescently joyful way. Third, we enter into the murky zone of the alchemist, the mystic, the Gnostic, and the saint. We crack the spine of ancient story and try, with our internet-soaked, McDonald's-fed 21st century CNN minds, to clearly and simply, with one cursory glance, understand what? Wisdom? Not all. Some is sheer folly. All is heavily edited, and most is the foggy, confusing account of an encounter with God that was more terrifying than exhilarating, and colored heavily by the implicit bias of the storyteller. Why bother? Because they did encounter God. Because those flawed, idiotic fools, our brothers, perceived the God that is, and that is worth our consideration. Fourth, last, most remembered, least put into action, the reenactment. Whenever you do this, remember me? Once a month, a week, a year, we remember. Or hear the words imploring us to do so. But that's not how the story goes. Whenever implies whenever. Whenever you eat anything, remember him. Whenever you drink anything, remember him. But that seems a little excessive, doesn't it? Are we meant to remember what? His accented Aramaic? The way his laugh filled a room with unaccountable joy? The way he just always understood everything, even us? No, not necessarily. Remember the new promise he was making, secured and backed by God, So when we fail to put all our fears at the altar, when we fail to praise with pure joy and are instead burdened by guilt, when we are confused by the many pitfalls of ancient wisdom interpreted to maim and wound, when we cannot help but to come limping and crying to God's door, filled with pain and accusation, we can be reminded there is another way. It is not a way of suffering. It is not a way of pain. It is the way of love, the way of joy. So remember the way of love whenever you eat the bread of pain, whenever you drink your cup of suffering. There is another way, and it is waiting for you to choose it again.